Okay, so here's this area again. Now I've tweaked this. See, something wasn't right here. Like this sort of rock tide break just sort of ended here, right? But this is what I mean by, work on your scene a little bit and then walk away. Go have a beverage or something, or tea, coffee, whatever, and then come back and look at it again. Don't try to close out the scene in one go. You know what I mean? Like revisit it, walk away, come back, walk away, come back. So I came back and I thought, this needs more. Like I'm sort of after this look right here, but not quite. But I wanted some of the smaller gravel up here. But I wanted a little bit of this feel here, okay? Even though it's not exactly the same, but I'm really key on this wider sort of slope. And I felt that maybe a little more fine-tuned tide break here would be nice, sort of sloping up, and where maybe this corner of the ground and the current has built up more sand over the years here. Okay, so once again, you can see this opening here, how it enhances the perspective, right? Just little subtle, little lines like that to just think them through. And so dry, moving stuff around dry on dry before you wet it down and seal it with matte medium, just to clean it up, because you don't want little pebbles there that are out of place unless they're buried in sand a bit. And I can come back and tweak this a bit more, but I want to keep this edge work here because at the barge slip reef approach, I covered a lot of it up because there's a lot of weeds growing there, but I'm not going to have very many weeds here. But there may be just a few down here, kind of. Okay? Okay, so now what I've done here is I'm creating a little bit of an overlap of the grass and roots, a combination thereof. And what I did was I took matte medium, in this case thick from the bottle, right, regular matte medium. I didn't dilute it, and I stabbed it up under the upper lips. There's a few layers there. I just did it randomly. I didn't get too fussy about it. Okay, so I'm going to go for a little more detail here because this is a real up close sort of postage stamp scene once again. Anyway, that term, postage stamp scene, I didn't think it would catch on, but anyway, it works. But what I want to do is I'm going to stab in some straight matte medium just under the lip here. I don't think you have to be too fancy about it, because I'm going to airbrush this grass, which is going to be simulated like roots. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take some pinched like this. Okay. I'm just going to stab it. I'm going to stab a bunch in there. A lot of it's going to come off. And then I'm going to, and whatever remains, I'll just reuse. But I got the glue up underneath and just a half-inch border all the way along. And then I just took the static grass, 4mm and 7mm mixed together, just with thatches like this, and just stuff it up in, and just leave it for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to vacuum it. Watch. Okay, so what I do is I just hold the vacuum head, not right up against it, but just come in slow, about an inch away, and move it along so it pulls the grass away from the slope, right? And then you'll get the grass coming out that way. It makes a big difference. It doesn't look like it does right away, but you can also come in and tweak some of it, because if I'm going to static grass some of this, just right onto the slope, with the static grass applicator. And so I already got a bit of a border, so it'll grow in and come out of there nice. I'm going to use a shorter grass first. Okay. Okay, so this is the very back. There's the track in here, and this is the first warehouse where the brewery is. And what I've done is I've just laid a pretty heavy layer of soil in here, just like this. And then I soaked it down. Actually, I put matte medium down first, sprinkled the soil on quite heavy, moved it around a bit with a brush, and then wetted it down with the spray ball, and then dribbled in matte medium. And then I'm just tamping it down with a rag just to create a little bit of an uneven but soft kind of surface. When you're working on a flat, plywood and cork, like, you want to try to create, even if it's a few millimeters of undulation in the terrain, because it really goes a long ways. To kind of lose the flat look, which is easy to do if you just do it in a subtle manner. Because when you're looking at each scene, you don't notice anyway. So, and then when you're dabbing like this too, it's going to create anomalies, like it's going to lift pieces, and that's good. You want that, right? Like you want, excuse me, you want randomness. You don't want everything to look smooth like a birthday cake, right? Or just a flat, smooth surface. You want undulations so that when you go to paint it, like with earth, you put washes on, it'll go into those areas and leave patterns that end up looking kind of cool, when you play around with washes, earth tone washes on the layout. Like, see, there's a bit of a ridge here. I don't know if you can see that, but just a hint of a service road there. That's it. That's all it takes, really, We're on the beach scene here, in the opening scene at this end of the layout I've been working over. I'm going to get into some paint here. I'll be using some traditional brushes and washes. Okay, I like to work a scene over. It's never, some might like it this way, but I work it over good and paint everything. So you don't have to. You can leave this rock the way it is, or the soil, and people be completely happy with that, but not me. So anyway, these are Vallejo earth tone colors. I have pretty much all of them. There's a sampling of them here. There's cement, light mud, concrete from left to right, sand beige, NATO brown, burnt umber. Then there's my go-to Tamiya earth. You see the bottle on the left there? That's why I use 99% isopropyl alcohol, because it separates quickly, right? When it settles in the bottle, then I know how much pigment I have. See, I can read the pigment level. That's full of isopropyl, and then I just shake it up and it suspends and spreads beautifully. And then there's some dark black brown for pin type washes and getting into cracks and reveals. And then I have these Vallejo pigments. I mean, I know they have a place, in the hobby, and that's great. I don't use them much, but I like to have them on hand just in case. I actually prefer the Gamblin, the professional artist ones, but they're very expensive, but they last forever. I'll probably be using some of those, but they're better quality than these for sure. And then isopropyl for my thinning medium, which I don't use with Vallejo, but I do with Tamiya, right? And then, of course, lots of water, right? A couple of tubs of water, some distilled water if you care. It doesn't really matter for me. I like to use it if I have it on hand. It's cheap, for a gallon, $1, I think it cost for a gallon of distilled water. just removes the minerals out of the water so it doesn't affect the paint in any minute anomaly or way that might bug you or whatever, but I don't notice it much with scenery anyway. And then someone mentioned about tools earlier, like what are your top 15 tools? Look, I just want to address that for a second. Like, I'm not going to list 15 top tools because there's really no such thing. You know, that's a number that, like, I get why someone would ask that question. But this is my basically paint knife, you know, that I use to mix paint with or for spreading mediums, right? There's 100 of these different styles of these, or this is just a basic style, you know, that I like. The name's worn off, so I don't even know. I don't pay attention to it. And then I just have paint brushes. A fan brush I like. Oil mostly brushes because they're stiff, right? Like they take abuse, especially when you're doing scenery work, right? Like you want a brush that's gonna take the pounding, like this one. This is an old veteran brush that just won't die. And then there's the smaller sable brushes for lighter work, and on it goes, right? An artist ends up with 1,000 brushes. You know, I can list them all for you if you want. Anyway, just get yourself a handful of brushes, a paint knife, and just practice. That's all. That's my best advice. Okay, so yeah, let's get started. Let's do a bit of things here. Let's add a few washes. I'll show you how I add a little bit of cement or concrete washes on this rock, just so that they look like this, right? I want this look. These have all been painted with light washes, this rock, just to get rid of the real rock look, to render it scale. All right, that's why I paint everything. Okay. Okay, so I just want to say something here with these thin washes that I'm doing. Like, you notice that I'm moving back and forth with different colors. Like, this is what you want to do. You want to have the colors on hand, and you want to have them all ready to be diluted. And one of the reasons why you dilute them as much and you build up layers, like you look at this and say, well, that doesn't cover much. Look, when this runs down, for example, when I go like this, see how it runs down into this here? If you're using too opaque or too strong a color, you're just going to be building up big, blotches of opaque paint over top of there. Like, you're not going to get the earth tones, all these colors blending together and working together. That's the whole point. So when you have overrun or overspray or overwash, if I can use the term, you can look at it and still say, okay, I think I'm going in the right direction here, right? Rather than just stabbing on some thick, opaque, craft paint, right? And I'm not like running down craft paint. If it's thinned properly like this and used accordingly, then it's just as effective in many ways. It just doesn't have the same quality pigment. But this is why I do this, right? This is why I build up layers, and then I can look at it and go, okay, I sort of like the direction I'm going with this, but maybe I want to darken it, or maybe I want to lighten it more. Like I could actually take this here, this bank here, and actually start building some cement grays into it, and it'll change the look altogether, right? It'll start to look like rock even, and it's just cellular clay. That's all it is, right? So that's the method to my madness with building up thin layers. You know, and sometimes they'll leave a stain, and then what you'll do is, like, see this stain along the edge here? I'm going to use this stain for a shorter grass, like a template, like a earth tone template. I'm going to just put matte medium over that later and just add some 4 mil in there. And then I'm going to add, I think I'm going to fill this area here. Like, let the process, you know, inspire you. Like, let the process of painting scenery, when you're into it, when you're focused into it, take you to areas that you would never know, like you'd never pay attention to. Like, see right here, like just painting along this little edge here, you can see a little bit of the old cellular clay just sticking out there. Well, you can use that as a border for darker paint or lighter. But use the textures to guide your paint. Use the textures to guide where you go with your colors and as you change them up. I'm going to do most of this like this by hand because I like using the traditional brush quite a bit. But I'm going to come in later with my airbrush to touch things up and so on. Okay, to tweak things. Okay. Okay, so I just want to talk about dark washes. Some people have different terms for it, like pin wash, things like that. But a pin wash is generally a wash that you put in as a shadow layer, that where you really thin the paint and it runs into all the cracks and crevices and as a shadow effect. And then you do a base coat over the higher surfaces and then a dry brush highlight later to give it that depth. Anyway, I just mix up, like for dark wash, I make sure I don't use black. And in this case, this is just an older Tamiya bottle, one of the larger ones, which I'm glad I still have it because they don't make them anymore. But I just make sure that my black is not black. I've added brown here. I don't even know what kind of brown. It doesn't really matter. You can add earth if you want. Just so that it's basically not black, right? And it looks like really thin, see? See how it's moving? That's just like water, right? Okay. So what I do here is, like, here I'll show you, like I'm going to stuff some of this color up in there, like up under the shadow areas. Okay. And if I want to, see here I can use water. So this isopropyl wash, isopropyl alcohol and Tamiya dark black and brown wash, I can just take, right, so I've been pulling from the bottle, stabbing in color like this, right? Now I could just take water like this and add to it just to thin it, to control it more. I don't want it maybe to be like where the edges, I want to, you know, sort of remove the flood marks, right? Because it's going to come down and flood into these areas here. So in order to chase the flood marks, to blend them, I just use a bit of water. Okay, see there? And then, so this, just to summarize again, this is Tamiya with 99% isopropyl alcohol, very thin. When I say thin, you'll have to determine that yourself. Like you can see when it goes on here. Initially it looks fairly dark, right? And then if I want to control it, tone it down, then I'll just add water like this. That's the beauty of Tamiya. It loves both water and isopropyl. Right? That's why I love this paint. Okay, so another reason why I do it this way is because it's safe, right? Like if you put on a heavy opaque coat, like look what it's doing already. Like if you put on a heavy opaque coat, then you're hooped, right? Now you got to cover it all up, and now you're building up thick layers of paint, thicker layers. And you're going to lose all the little anomalies in the texture and in the detail. But when you do it this way, you're always going to be able to change it up. And the color that shows through when you put a layer over top of this will add to the depth of the earth tone color, because earth changes all the time, right? Like sometimes we make the mistake of just seeing brown. Well, go for a walk down by the river, or take a shovel and plunge it into the ground and dig a small hole and have a look at all the color variations there. All right? It'll make you rethink everything. Okay? So that's what I use, and I get it up underneath where there's going to be shadow. Okay? Okay, so let's talk about this for a second here. The North Shore beach here with the tide, the low tide look, and the undercut bank. Notice how the color changes, the dark over the earth. See right there, this transition here. So it's another layer. See how it changes up? Yeah, it's dark, but it's going to be lightened again, right? With other coats. Look at the different, see the different tones here? It's all washes, it's all thin washes. Even this sand here had a light wash, a dark light wash on it. Very thin again, chased with water, right? See, that's how you come to that look, you see. See how that's shaping up? There's no grass yet. I'm really liking this. Last night I really got into it. I got alone and I put a game trail in here. A lot of deer out this way, and so I figured this would be a good watering hole probably for deer that frequent the area by the river there. A little bit of a tiny runoff trib right here, just to catch the viewer's eye, and then, well, I'll let the cat out of the bag. I'm going to probably be sculpting 4 or 5 deer for right in here. So I'll build up little miniature wire armatures and do them. I've done it before. I like doing my own, sculpting my own wildlife. I know there's people out there that do a good job of it, but I like to keep all my stuff original and scratched if I can get away with it. So I'm really liking the way this scene is developing. I'm actually liking it more than, than the reef in some ways. Even though that has its place and so on, it'll be more fleshed out once the barge slip is there and all the other details. It'll work fine. But this is how it happens when you get into it. You just keep getting better at it. When you spend time. That's just the nature of modeling for everyone. The more time we put into it, like we can have all the tips we want and all the paints and tools we want. It's not going to produce this if we don't put them to practice, right? We need to put the time in and practice the craft, and we'll get better at it. This is the way it is. Nothing comes automatically. You know, people talk about people being gifted. Well, I'll tell you something right now. If you don't, like, people that are, if you don't work harder than everybody else, it won't show. It's as simple as that.